If you combine the total economic output of the 165 smallest countries on Earth, they still don't equal the financial weight of a single private aerospace company. SpaceX is preparing to enter the public stock market with an initial public offering that values the company at $1.75 trillion right out of the gate. This specific market debut is expected to push its founder, Elon Musk, to a net worth that would make him the world's first individual trillionaire. We are entering a phase where the market capitalization of a single corporation is now larger than the gross domestic product of entire sovereign regions. Most companies that reach valuations this high are software giants like Apple or Alphabet. They thrive on low overhead and high margins. SpaceX, on the other hand, builds massive physical machines. This chart shows exactly what that looks like on paper. The company generated $18.6 billion in revenue last year, but that income was swallowed by a net loss of $4.9 billion. That deep red deficit comes from the heavy physical realities of aerospace engineering. You cannot write code to bypass the cost of raw titanium, volatile rocket fuel, and the constant destruction of prototype hardware during testing. Investors are looking past these current losses. They are banking on a timeline where the company's expansion translates to the survival of the human race. To understand how we arrived at a $1 trillion valuation, we have to look back to 2002. The company started with a $145 million seed investment, funded entirely by the sale of PayPal. At the time, the entire aerospace industry operated on a flawed economic model. Every rocket sent into orbit was discarded after a single flight, turning hundreds of millions of dollars into space debris and ocean trash. To stretch limited capital, the early team operated on a tight budget, conducting initial tests from a remote launchpad on Omelek Island. The learning curve was brutal. Their first 3 launch attempts ended in catastrophic explosions, nearly wiping out the company's entire initial funding. With parts for only one final attempt in 2008, the 4th rocket reached orbit. That single flight secured a life-saving $1.6 billion contract from NASA. NASA needed a reliable, private logistics contractor capable of ferrying essential supplies and personnel up to the International Space Station. That government contract provided the financial runway the company needed to survive long enough to solve the industry's biggest problem, disposability. Using that NASA capital, they developed the much larger Falcon 9 rocket and mastered the vertical landing. By flying the same rocket boosters multiple times, they began operating like a commercial airline. This drastically reduced the price per pound to send cargo into orbit. Because launch costs were now a fraction of competitors, they became their own biggest customer. They stopped relying solely on external cargo and started launching their own project, Starlink. By deploying thousands of these internet-beaming satellites into low Earth orbit, the company is transitioning from a specialized delivery service into a global telecom utility. Reusability is the specific mechanism that makes these massive satellite constellations financially viable. By removing the cost of the rocket from every launch, SpaceX can build a recurring revenue stream that justifies its $1 trillion market value. But debuting at $1.75 trillion is only the first step in a much more aggressive financial plan. Investors have tied the founder's ability to divest his personal equity to a specific performance milestone. The company must reach a total market valuation of $7.5 trillion. To capture that kind of value, they are currently testing Starship. It is a massive, fully reusable vehicle built specifically for deep space transport. Starship is engineered with a payload capacity large enough to capture the logistics market for the Moon and Mars, sectors analysts project will be worth trillions in the coming decades. The company's long-term financial ceiling relies on turning speculative deep space travel into a high-volume cargo industry. While the satellite revenue supports the current valuation, investors are pricing in the long-term objective of a self-sustaining colony of 100,000 humans on Mars. Once the transportation technology reaches the necessary scale, humanity will have the physical means to establish a permanent outpost on another planet. This IPO essentially turns the public stock market into the funding mechanism for the heavy hardware needed to make that migration physically possible. If you want to keep exploring the business of tomorrow's technology, hit the like button, share this video with a fellow visionary, and subscribe to the channel.